Number 263 Squadron was a Royal Air Force fighter squadron formed in Italy towards the end of the First World War. After being disbanded in 1919, it was reformed in 1939, flying mainly strike and heavy fighter aircraft until becoming Number 1 Squadron in 1958. History. First World War. The squadron was formed in Italy on the 27th of September 1918 from flights of the Royal Naval Air Service. After that service's amalgamation with the Royal Flying Corps to form the RAF, it flew Sopwith Babies and Felixstowe F-3s from Otranto, reconnoitering for submarines escaping from the Adriatic Sea into the Mediterranean Sea. The squadron was disbanded on the 16th of May 1919. Second World War. The squadron reformed as a fighter squadron at RAF Filton near Bristol on the 20th of October 1939, taking over some of 605 Squadron's biplane Gloucester Gladiator Mk.'s. It became operational towards the end of the year and scrambled for the first time on the 12th of January 1940. Around this time the squadron received 22 Gloucester Gladiator Mk.'s to replace the Mk.'s. Gloucester Gladiator in Norway. The Gladiator may look like a First World War aircraft, but with twice the speed of most First World War fighters it had considerably better performance. As a fighter, it did not compare well with the type of enemy aircraft it might expect to meet in the Second World War, being only slightly faster than the Heinkel 111 bomber. Germany invaded Norway on the 9th of April 1940, and 263 Squadron was soon instructed to prepare for a move. On the 20th of April, the aircraft were flown via RAF Sealand to Scapa Flow, Scotland, where Fleet Air Arm pilots landed them on the aircraft carrier HMS Glorious, and 18 Gladiators sailed for Norway. On the 24th of April, after 2 days sailing, the squadron flew its aircraft off the carrier to a landing strip on the frozen Lake Lysaskogsvidnet in Oppland in central southern Norway. Unfortunately for the enterprise, the squadron was extremely short of ground staff and equipment, and few of its Gladiators had been prepared for combat. When the Luftwaffe struck with Heinkel 111s shortly after daybreak on the 25th of April, by the end of the 26th of April, although 263 Squadron had managed to destroy 2 Heinkels, all of its aircraft had been destroyed or rendered unserviceable, and by the end of the month the squadron was ordered home. The re-equipped squadron returned to the far north of Norway on the 21st of May, flying from Bardufoss airfield near Narvik, reinforced by number 46 Squadron, whose Hurricanes arrived a few days later, using an airstrip at Scanland. Due to unsuitable ground at Scanland, 46 Squadron moved so that both were operating from Bardufoss by the 27th of May. The squadrons had been ordered to defend the fleet anchorage at Scanland and the military base at Harstad on the island of Hinnøya. Action was short but intense before the squadrons were instructed on the 2nd of June to prepare for evacuation. 263 Squadron had flown 249 sorties and claimed 26 enemy aircraft destroyed. 263's 10 surviving Gladiators were landed on HMS Glorious on the 7th of June. Glorious sailed but was intercepted by the German battleships Gneisenau and Scharnhorst. She was sunk, and along with the aircraft from 4 squadrons, 263 Squadron lost its COS, LDR John W. Donaldson, FLT Alvin T. Williams and P.O. Sidney Robert McNamara, along with 7 other pilots. Among the pilots who fought with the squadron in Norway and died on Glorious was F.O. Granted DFC, one of many Bermudians to serve in the RAF during the war and the first Bermudian to die in the war. Westland Whirlwind. The Westland Whirlwind was the first cannon-armed fighter for the RAF, first flown in October 1938 and at the production stage by 1940. It was a twin-engined heavy fighter bomb with 420mm Hispano cannon in the nose. It was more powerful than an 8-gun fighter like the Spitfire Hurricane. It was fast, matching the current Spitfire's maximum speed, but performed best at low altitude and was used for convoy escort and against small targets in the Channel and northern France. Only 114 were produced. Number 263 Squadron spent the next 6 months with 13 Group near Edinburgh. It assembled on the 10th of June 1940 at RAF Drammen after 2 weeks moved to RAF Grangemouth, where it spent 3 months before returning to Drammen until November and then moved south to be nearer its intended targets in North France and the English Channel. During its time in Scotland, it was to sort out the final problems with the Rolls-Royce Peregrine engines and Hispano cannon. To fill the gap, the squadron was provided with Hawker Hurricanes, which were flown in action a few times. Production of the Peregrine by Rolls-Royce was slow, and it was November before the squadron was fully equipped. The squadron transferred to RAF Exeter, commencing chameleon patrols against enemy E-boats stationed in the English Channel and western approaches, which would rescue bomber crews who had ditched in the sea. Here, on the 12th of January 1941, a section patrolling near the Isles of Scilly located a Junkers Ju-88, and pilot officer Stein was credited with a probable kill. As well as its fighter capability, the Whirlwind could operate as a fighter bomber. In September 1941, SLDR Thomas Bew, the squadron's 21-year-old commander, had suggested that the bombing capability should be investigated. It was rejected. However, in August 1942 the squadron moved to RAF Cologne in Wiltshire, and bomb racks were fitted to 8 aircraft. Initially 2 250-pound bombs could be carried. Later this was increased to 2 500-pound bombs. No. 263 Squadron flew Whirlwinds until the end of 1943, these 3 years being spent in the West, 2 years in airfields around Wiltshire, Dorset and Gloucestershire, 6 months in South Wales, and 6 months in Devon and Cornwall. Apart from periods of training and rest and recuperation, the squadron's operations involved air-ground attacks on airfields, railways and roads in northern France, air-sea attacks on enemy shipping, sea convoy escort and bomber escort. Hawker Typhoon. Like the Whirlwind, the Hawker Typhoon 1B was a fighter bomber, a strike fighter. Although only powered by a single engine, the Napier Sabre, it was more powerful than the 2 Peregrine Whirlwind engines. As well as 4 cannon, it could be armed with 2 500-pound bombs or 8 60-pound rockets. Like the Whirlwind, it performed at its best at lower altitudes. In December 1943, 263 Squadron became non-operational while aircrew and ground staff became familiar with the new plane. By the end of the month, flying on the Whirlwind had shrunk to 22 hours and over 309 hours had been flown on the Typhoon. After 2 weeks armament practice camp at RAF Fairwood Common, the squadron became operational again on the 1st of February 1944 and attacked for the first time on the 3rd of February when 3 dive bombing operations took place. On the 27th of August 1944, the Squadron No. 266 Squadron RAF Typhoons with Spitfire escort was mistakenly ordered to attack the Royal Navy 1st Minesweeping Flotilla off Cap d'Antifer, Le Havre, with the result that HMS Britomart and Hussar were sunk and Salamander was irreparably damaged, killing 117 sailors and wounding 153 more. Cap Arcona. On the 3rd of May 1945, 3 ships, the Cap Arcona, the Thielbeck and the Deutschland, were sunk as a result of 4 attacks by Hawker Typhoons of No. 83 Group RAF, after number 184 Squadron RAF and number 198 Squadron RAF. It was 263 squadrons, by then based in RAF Alhorn, who were led by squadron leader Martin T.S. Rumbold. Post-war, after disbandment on the 28th of August 1945, No. 616 Squadron RAF with the Gloucester Meteor jet fighters was renumbered as 263 Squadron at RAF Acklington. After Meteor's 263 Squadron moved on to Hawker Hunters in 1955. The unit arrived at Wattisham in October 1950, and transferred to RAF Stradishall in August 1957. It was disbanded there on 1 July 1958 and renumbered to become No. 1 Squadron RAF. It was reformed for the last time on 1 June 1959 to operate the Bristol Bloodhound surface-to-air missile at RAF Watton until disbanding on 30 June 1963. Aircraft operated. Organization.